Hey, welcome to Tone Talk with Mark Uzansky and Dave Friedman. Today's guest on Tone Talk is legendary producer, engineer, and mixer Ross Hogarth, whose remarkable career has included work with Van Halen, John Mellencamp, and Roger Waters, Ziggy Marley, and countless other iconic artists. Ross, how are you?
I'm good. Good to be here with you guys.
Yeah, great to have you. Thanks for taking your time with us. We appreciate it.
Yeah,
Dave, you're
the list is so much greater than that too.
that's true. That's true. I truncated it. Absolutely.
You probably forgot some people you worked with.
Yeah, just a few.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you truncated it a bit for sure. Yes, and I'm doing it remotely. So we won't get into why, but I'm doing it remotely and I'm out of the state right now. So
Yep. Yeah, well, safe travels when you go back.
I'll
the
be back tomorrow
state
morning.
misses you. You're missed. The state misses you. You're missed.
Oh, I missed? Okay. I don't know if I missed the state though.
You like being in Detroit?
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah, that's where I am, everyone.
Oh, I'm sorry if I divulged
That's
that.
fine.
Sorry. Oh, wasn't catching on that you didn't want that out. But anyway, Ross, where are you located? You're in LA also?
Yeah, I'm out at the edge of the valley. I'm Woodland Hills, Calabasas.
Oh, that's a nice area.
Edge of, the edge here, foot of Topanga.
Yeah.
Yep. I was actually when I was in California last, we stayed in the Calabasas area over there. It was
Yeah,
nice.
I'm mailing address Woodland Hills, but it's like Calabasas is across the street. So
Yeah.
I don't pay Calabasas property taxes. Yay.
Perfect. Yeah. Or
That's
house
true.
prices.
But yeah, no, I've been here since the mid '90s. I used to live right down near where I was in what was called Colfax Meadows, which is real close to, studios. It's basically Studio City, all that. Yeah.
Right.
But anyway,
Cool.
yeah.
So is that your personal studio that you're in right there?
Yeah, this is called Boogie Motel, and this is where I mix records and have been mixing since. I bought the house mid '90s and turned this garage. This is a glorified garage, which you can do these days. Now we're such a cottage industry. We won't. Maybe we'll talk about that later. But the bottom line is, when I bought the house, I needed a man cave, so I turned what is the garage into like a room, doubled the windows, double doors. I didn't float the floor, but I took the ceiling and beamed it and opened it out, and it's a much nicer space that way. And just got lucky when the advent and change of Pro Tools came in the late '90s, where we had delay compensation, where I could put inserts and use my analog gear. It ended up by virtue of the way the business changed and also clients, that I started mixing records here. And then when you win a Grammy out of your house and people aren't like saying, well, you should have been at Ocean Way, they hear a record. If the record sounds good, that's what it does. If it doesn't sound good, where you did it doesn't matter either. A lot of crappy records have been made out of great studios. So so since like the early 2000s, and there's two records I haven't mixed here. One is Warren Haynes' Government Mule Deep End Volume 2. We did that up in the Plant, when it still was the Plant up in Sausalito.
That's a great album.
And then Van Halen, Different Kind of Truth, we mixed at 5150. Dave was around a lot, with a lot of gear, and Ed, and a lot of love.
Oh yeah, miss him dearly.
That's awesome. Talk about that. It looks like a great studio. So you got all that rack gear behind you, which is beautiful.
I'm a hybrid mixer. I love my analog gear, and I also do. I've been dealing with Pro Tools and plugins my whole, since they've been. Even before, like in the '80s, I worked for Giorgio Moroder. We had the first digital tape machines. So that concept of like having a copy of the song in two places at the same time. You would never really do that with analog. I mean, you could if you made B reels, but we never really made more than one B reel. And so the analog, wherever you worked was where you're working. But with like Georgia, we had, Sony, we would clone the Sony. So with the advent of hard drives, the concept of being able to, work remotely from someone else, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you feel about the plugins versus the real thing? I mean, have the plugins become so close these days?
Yes and no. I mean, people ask all the time, what does it sound? I mean, there's just something as, we could go down this rabbit hole. And, but to me, there's nothing like a tube or iron transformers, that sound, which, Dave, Dave's not building, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I won't, you're not building the models of your amps. You're building your amps.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if someone models your amp into like one of the modeling, maybe it does an okay job if they're touring and they don't want to lug a head around or whatever, but it's not going to be your head. It's not going to be it's going to be some, somewhat of a replication of that. So plugins get pretty close. I mean, they get close to doing what they do. There's a lot of better plugins than there are other plugins.
Sure.
And a lot of people get fooled by the GUI. It's sort of, let their eyes go with them instead of their ears. And so there are a lot of sexy looking GUIs, and people use a lot of those plugins because they look kind of sexy. But can you take a piece of gear that has tubes and transformers and iron and natural harmonic distortion and saturation and all those things? Some are better than others. Long answer. Short answer is no. If I put something into like a real 1176, it's a real 1176 or what,
Yeah. In other words, the plugins get close.
Yeah.
Some closer than others. But
and if I have like 5 or 6 or 8 vocals, I don't have 8 1176s. Yeah. And if I want, that on every channel, I'm going to have to use a plugin.
Yeah.
But when I'm mixing the kind of records I mix, if it's Edgar Winter's vocal or Joe Bonamassa's vocal or Keb Mo or Taj Mahal's vocal, I'm going to be reaching for analog gear, just straight away.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I mean, I for years I had an Alan Smart C1 bus compressor. Yeah,
I got one right
somewhere there.
Somewhere up, like right there.
and for the life of me, I tried over and over and over again to get something in the box that does what that does. Nope. Every time it was like, kind of close, but if you just listen closely, no, there's more depth and more realness and more punch, and it sits better, and it just, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm addicted to that. I mean, honestly,
more real.
And it gets, we could go really nerdy on it, but it's just the bottom line.
Oh yeah, we go nerdy here, just so you.
I just always say the same thing. I say the speakers don't lie.
Yeah.
For me, if I close my eyes and, I'm listening, when I go back and forth between like my analog chain, which is pretty extensive, like it's a lot everything's doing a little. Like over my shoulder right here, I have 2 passive transformers, 2 different sets of passive transformers. There's another set. You like how I'm like pointing?
Yeah, that's fine. We've done this before.
The finger pointer. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that one right there, those are UTCs, like that, what would be in like a Fairchild. That's a pair of UTCs. And then those are Molotkeys as what would be in like Neumann mastering lathe. And then up here are Western Electrics. And I actually have those not 1-to-1. Those go to like those are 200 to 50 ohms so that they blow up like people like the sound of like records that sound sort of blown up. So I'll put something through those and blow those up. I don't put my mix bus on those, but I'll go between the two sets of transformers, and those right off the bat are like going into like a console or a piece of gear, you know, and then I've got Pultecs and, you know, so all those things add up to like a sound.
Yeah.
You know, and that's, I'm not mastering, but what's on my mix bus is generally already got this color to it, or a color to it. So that's
what is on the mix bus.
Well, it comes out D to D into I've tried a few different converters, and I like the ones that are not particularly colored. I use Dangerous because they're very they're neutral, open, and real sounding without being clinical sounding. There's other converters I've found are too clinical. So it goes from the Dangerous, it's D to D into the Dangerous, and then A, you know, the A part, the D to A goes immediately into one of these two transformers, because I've found that the transformers immediately smooth out even any possible dithering you have, just smooths the curve. And then that goes across to the other side, and then that'll go into another Dangerous, a back EQ, and that's and Blue Saraceno always gives me shit about this, but I'm knocking down 17 cycles on the bottom, and I'm knocking down 70 cycles on the top, sometimes even more, but usually it's 70K up top, because you don't need any of that shit. You don't need 17 cycles. It's earth. It's DC offset. It's just stuff down there that you can't even hear. And then the top is like, it's not air. It's usually something that doesn't even equate into air. And if you were doing like vinyl, you would never have any of that there anyway. And then from there, it goes into my compressor choice of the day, which is either the C1, or usually it's the Dramastic Obsidian, which has a built-in high pass filter. And then, or I'll choose a Neve or an API, or there's, you know, I have my little rack of compressors, but normally I like SSL compression, like you said. And the C1, the more modern C1 is the Dramastic. That's a guy named John Ellis, who just rebuilt Bob Clearmountain's SSL in his new room. That he
got that rebuilt.
That's the one he set himself up in after the fire, and not flood, the fire, and the whole just his house got destroyed. So, and then I go out into an EQ, into an old 90s, what's called NTI, which the company in today's world is called MAAG, MAAG, but it used to be the NTI. That's this blue guy here. And then into my mastering Pultecs, and then back across to the Dangerous, where it's going A to D back in. And the Dangerous actually has a transformer in it that I can kick in a little of too. So there's all this, like, you know, it's from here to here to here to here to here, and it's a little bit everywhere along the way. But I'm only using the Dramastic, or, you know, compression, maybe knocking down sometimes maybe 1 to 3 dB. I don't use a ton of compression on my mix bus. I don't use limiting. I'm not a guy who likes limiting on the mix bus. So I'm not trying to make shit hot. That's like, leave that for my mastering engineers.
The proper way.
Yeah,
I like to refer it.
I'm not doing anything I did different, except I got to figure out how to get out of Pro Tools.
Yeah.
Well, so I got to have good, you know, D to A to D, in and out.
Yeah.
Because I don't want Pro Tools conversion on my mix bus. I mean, I don't want, you know, Avid. I don't want the sound of that, and I don't like this. I have all my converters have been modified, so, and the only ones that haven't are just doing like parallel drum bus crushing stuff that doesn't really need good conversion, you know, because I'm I'm crushing the stuff anyway.
Right. Got a question for you. First question here from Braxel wants to know: are those jam racks you have your rack gear in?
They are. I love that company. 3 years ago, I had a flood in my studio, and I had to cut open the walls, and I had to tear apart my. I had to literally empty my room, and in the emptying of my room, I decided to re-rack my gear, and my good friend Marek Stikos, who doesn't live here anymore, but Marek used to run GC Pro. He's independent on his own on the East Coast. Marek turned me on to jam racks, and that guy's story is amazing too. I forget the name of the guy that owns the company, but it's a labor of love for him. It's bamboo. The wood is bamboo. So yes, the answer is yes. I really like these racks. They're so
They look nice. Yeah, I like the bottom, how it curves, and yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. So
That's very cool.
These were better than anything that I could find, and they're they come like you put them together, but they're super built, so they all fit together really well. It's not like some IKEA shit where you never get it to go together.
I've been there. So curious, Ross. How did you get interested in music and recording? How did that start for you?
I think that you could take a poll on most of the guys that you have on your show or you guys are around.
Mm-hmm.
We don't choose music; it chooses us.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and then what you do with it is, and I'm sorry, I was exercising and I was out in the yard and my glasses keep fogging, so I'm just gonna have to deal with that.
No worries.
So yeah, I grew up, and before I grew up on the East Coast in New York, and
me too.
from
Brooklyn, Queens area.
Yeah, well,
Manhattan.
I was in New York General, and then we lived in Queens,
Oh, cool.
Jackson Heights, but I don't remember that. And then we moved in the city. So,
yeah, it's around. I was like real young as well. How old are you?
I'm 66.
Okay, yeah, you're a little older than me. I'm 57, going to be 58.
Yeah.
So, gotcha. So cool.
So yeah, I grew up in I was taking all the stuffing out of the couches, the arms of the couch with soup spoons and banging on pots and pans and, just creating a racket when I was really little. And the only thing for them to do was throw me in the basement with this little blue Slingerland kick snare, hi-hat, cymbal. and so I was a drummer before I didn't, like I said, it chose me. My father had a mandolin with 6 strings, and I started to pick on that. My older brothers had guitars, and I would pick on them. And, was trying to play against the stuff coming out of the radio, melodies. And my mother's best friend was the folk singer Pete Seeger. So I was surrounded by people playing banjo. Like he was one of the most respected 5-string banjo players. His book called 5-String Banjo, still to this day, that came out in the 40s, is like the consummate if you want to learn how to play banjo. Now that banjo's come back and become a much more of a, it's always been a viable instrument in a lot of areas, but it's obviously with the advent of Billy strings and bluegrass and newgrass. And so, I was picking on instruments. I was like playing mandolin, playing banjo. I can't do unfretted. I can't do, violin or fiddle or anything. I'm not about that. But I played French horn. And so I played music when I was a kid, so I'm a musician at the heart of it. But I had an epiphany at a very young age that I'd be in the some shit club in the Midwest in a crushed velvet suit in the middle of winter, playing to like two drunks and a pool table. And that's what my career was going to look like. You know, I was legitimately pretty decent. I mean, I'm a pretty decent guitar player, not to like, you know, the guys that I'm around, I don't even pick up a guitar or even look at it when I'm around the guys that I've worked with. Cause you know, we're talking about working with the greatest musicians in the world, but, and that's just the biggest blessing. But I did have this like thought in my head that I did want to work with the greatest musicians in the world. It was never going to happen with me being the musician. And so that's where came the concept of a B plan before I even knew that it was my A plan. Because the A plan at first was to maybe be a musician when I was a kid, because I played, you know, all these instruments and played in bands and, you know, was kicking around in garage, you know, rock and all that and having a good time. But I got out to the West Coast and I initially moved to San Francisco with a whole bunch of New Yorkers. We took over the Haight, built a pizzeria in the Haight that's still there, all lived in a storefront. But it got me, you know, from the Haight, and from there it got me connected down to Santa Cruz. And at that point in time, in the mid 70s, the road crew for the Doobie Brothers, Jackson Browne, there was a whole clan of mercenaries. We called ourselves rock and roll mercenaries. And I connected to this whole clan of rock and roll mercenaries, and they all worked for what I call the Mellow Mafia. And so I was super fortunate through a series of just saying yes and showing up to end up working for David Lindley and Ry Cooder and doing drums and stuff for Mick Fleetwood and Jim Keltner and Ian Wallace, who played drums with David Lindley. And I was on the forefront in LA of a clan of we were based out of a rehearsal studio called Alley Rehearsal. And at Alley, that's where Bonnie Raitt stored her gear. David Lindley stored his gear. Davy Johnston stored his gear there. You know, Davy, who has played with Elton John, you know, his whole career. Ian Wallace stored his drums there. Joe Lala, percussion player who's not alive anymore, he was part of Stills' Manassas, and, you know, lots of. So Billy Burnett, Little Feat. Then there were a lot of other bands that came out of Alley. I was already making records, but like Black Crowes and Ozzy Osbourne and Jellyfish, and, you know, Alley Rehearsal was like a really amazing place in North Hollywood.
Wow.
So I helped Howard Dumble build amplifiers, because I was also someone who I had taken electronics courses, you know. I mean, I'm bouncing around in telling my story, but I realized, you know, that I needed to fill in a lot of blanks. And so I took night classes when I wasn't on the road. And I, you know, took philosophy, and I took psychology, and I took music theory, and I took electronics. Because there was this thing of like, well, maybe if this doesn't pan out, I'll be an electrical engineer. But I, you know, when I talk about my A or my B plan, I've never had a B plan once I started working as a roadie, because that led to being not only a roadie, but a sound man, a production manager, an A1, and then into the studios, because I was trusted. So how I got into the studio, you know, work was because I was trusted. When you work with people like David Lindley, who's playing on all sorts of sessions, or Jim Keltner schlepping his gear around. And then we were talking earlier, I was Jeff Piccaro's drum tech after the guy that was doing them. Jeff didn't want to deal with him anymore. So
get out of here. Really?
Yeah. So I was doing Piccaro, and I was doing Lala, and I was doing I had a couple of guys who had Fairlights, you know, back then, carting their Fairlights around, because I was doing everything I could to get off the road. And that's when I helped start a business called Andy Brower Studio Rentals, which is where Dave starts to come into the story, because Dave worked for Andy. When I first met Dave, Dave was a cartridge guy, but he was also, the amp guy. He became the amp guy. And then your company started basically out of Andy's shop, right?
No, it was after that. It was considerably after that, but I got involved with some other companies with amps when it was still.
Yeah, Joey and
making music, and then Bruce Egnator from Egnator Amps, and
I mean, I think that the overarching part of my story, and even you could say Dave's story, is we kind of, even though we're really good at doing shit alone, like I'm really good at, like, I don't need your help, I can do it alone. But the part of my story, which is, I think, what leads to success, is when you realize that you need the help of others and you allow others to help you to get somewhere. Now, you still are going to have to do it. Like, no one can mix my records. No one can, like, engineer my records, but you have to keep an open mind, and you have to be able to play well with others. You have to be able to check that box, plays well with others, and gets along and has a good attitude. And, because a lot of the opportunities I had early on were just, disguised as like hard work that no one wanted to do. Who wants to drive a 22-foot bobtail to Texas and get there? We have 3 shows in Texas and we only have this many hours to do it. You go, yeah, okay. That means I'm not going to sleep for like 4 days, but I'll go do that. And knowing that I get to go do that with, Ry Cooter, Jim Keltner, Van Dyke Parks, and, or Lindley, and you know what I mean? Or Robin Ford. And I mean, I was just working for everybody.
So how'd you get involved with Andy Brower? How did that work?
Well, because I was actually a legitimate guitar tech. Like, I could actually not that I do it anymore, but I could take apart a guitar and put it back together. I could I could change out pickups, and I knew how to do a fret dress, and I knew how to and I had a micrometer, and I knew what gauges, and I was a legit guitar tech, and I had helped Howard Dumble build amplifiers. He had taught me how to, look at values and do mil spec, and how to solder, not have cold solder joints, and all the things that Howard was all about. Alexander, sorry for those out there.
Depending on what year it was.
Yeah, I mean, we won't get into I worked with him when he was building amps for everybody, and these were actually great amps. For Lowell and Lindley and Rye and Larry Carlton and Carlos Rios, and I mean, all the cats. Stevie Ray. So Andy showed up out of, I guess, a music store or something, and he had this good idea that these guitar guys needed, because this was the age of sessions. There were like these sessions. This was like the wrecking crew of the early 80s in LA.
So what year are we talking about? Would you say?
We're talking like 80, 81, 81, 82.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect timing.
And I'd met my wife to be in 79, and we're dating, and I'm a ghost because I'm on the road all the time. And she's like, wants to get married. I want to get married, but I'm a ghost. I'm the guy that comes off the road and throws his towels on the floor. And she's like, I'm not your maid, And so that's what you do when you're on the road for, 4 months or something. You get off the road, you don't even think about it. You just throw the towels on the floor, except, I live here, so, and so it was a lot of like, okay, I got to find a way to get off the road. I got to find something that I can make money at, because I'm not yet. And I have these studio chops because I've had some opportunities, David Lindley's El Rayo X and some other things, but, and my real engineering hadn't really come into play. And so the cartridge thing was a nice, like, okay, I think I can pull this off, this transition somehow. And Andy had set himself up as the cat that would, he was just slicker than me. Like he just, at that point in time, he had the gift of gab, and he had the little briefcase and all the little shine cloth stuff, except I was the guy humping all the gear. I was the guy with the Helms Bakery truck. And I was like, I'm just heftier than Andy. Andy, oh, my back hurts. Oh, I can't do that. So I was the guy. I was the guy schlepping all the gear, humping all the gear in, setting it all up, and then Andy would come cruising in, polish the guitar, show them,
lay the picks out straight.
You know what I'm saying? And I got the sweat pouring off me because in LA, most of the time it's anywhere from 75 to 100 degrees. It just is. Even in the middle of like winter. So I'm the guy sweating, changing my shirt, and then driving the gear to the next gig as Andy's like writing the invoice and being Mr. Kid Gloves. But Andy was awesome. I mean, I can't take anything away from him. It was his business, and I was welcome to be part of it. But I definitely helped start it at the ground floor of it. And but I wasn't cut out for that. I'm doing what it all led to where I'm at today. So no regrets on any of it. It was all meant to be. And I also, there was a point in time where I had drum guys too. I had Keltner and I had Ian Wallace and Lala. So there was a point in time where on Lancashire, a block below the alley below what was a Bank of America, you had Andy in the front, Jim Tyler in the back of their shop. So I was on the ground floor of Jim, also building his guitars for a lot of these guys. Man. And next door was my shop where I kept a lot of the gear. I had Bob Glob's bass rig and drums. And I actually, and Ross Garfield, I gave my business to Ross Garfield when I permanently got out of it all. When the doors were opened enough for me to be a full-time engineer, Ross took over my shop. And Drum Doctors, I handed him Keltner and I handed him Picaro, and that launched the Drum Doctor. And that, and he went off in because he knew Andy. Those guys were pals from, I think, Chatsworth or somewhere up. I didn't grow up out here, so for me. There was my club that I was part of wasn't like LA, it was musicians. That makes sense. I didn't really feel part of the LA club, and I still don't even really, even though I've been here, most of my adult life. But I've always been a guy who, to this day, as a producer, as an engineer, I'm all about taking care of musicians and serving them. And honestly, without, maybe I don't get to take my own scorecard that well, but I do get to say, when you are good at something, I think it's healthy to say you are and not self-deprecate, because, it's like a coin. On one side, it says I'm shit. And then on the other side, it says I'm the shit. And there's only one thing in between I'm shit and I'm the shit is the. Either way, it's not very cool to say I'm shit or I'm the shit. There's nothing very humble about that. So, because, if you say I'm shit, you're looking for someone to go, oh, you're not. And then if you say I'm the shit, they go, well, you're not the shit either. So I just like I'm not all about being a big deal. It's always about being the real deal. So I've tried really hard through my life to just kind of be the real deal, which is a guy who shows up, works his ass off, and takes care of whatever situation I'm in. And it was the motto of us at the Alley, which was see the job, do the job, stay out of the misery. Not misery, but the misery, like it's a noun. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's something.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a key to that, because in this industry, Dave, you've been able to navigate it. It sounds like, Ross, you've been able to navigate it also, which is when working with artists, you have to navigate a lot of personality, a lot of ego, a lot of all kinds of things. And if you say the one wrong thing or ask the wrong question or whatever it is, you can just be out of the room and not be cool anymore, right? Like you're out. You're like done.
You're
Right?
blackballed.
You're blackballed. You're done. I'm not working with this fucker guy anymore. And, and that can happen real quick, I think.
I mean, the kind of the kings of that was Ed and Alex. They at a drop of a hat, the one wrong thing, and you were fucking done.
Yeah, and I'll say something about that. Like and I was around those guys a lot. Like I first, and this is an interesting thing because this goes back to Andy Brower's again. Matt Bruck, he started at Andy Brower's.
Yeah, he would work with me and then got that gig as his little, runner boy at the time. Really, it was like just a little studio assistant thing.
So I met Matt Bruck way back then, and he and I always got along, like in a good way, like, and so I had a positive reputation when they wanted somebody, and Matt says to Ed, yeah, we can trust this guy. I trust this guy. Mm-hmm. Because up at 5150 and with Ed and Al, I have no problem saying that they were wolves. Like you don't come into like a wolf pack, and if a wolf doesn't trust you, he'll eat you alive.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things I don't have in all my years and hanging out, I don't have a selfie or a photo of the two of us or the three of us like this. Like I don't have an Ed and Ross or an Al, Ed and Ross photo because I never felt it was appropriate. Like I always felt like this relationship we have, and I'm not I mean, I hope you have a photo, Dave,
nope,
but I don't. Yeah. Okay. See, and that's the thing. I
would never ask for that ever.
Do you know what I'm saying? I never felt comfortable. There are people that I do have photos of, and I got a shitload of me and Edgar because Edgar loves taking photos. And recently I was working with Billy Strings and he loved taking photos. It's like you work with people that like the photos and they take photos. But with those guys, I always felt that it was an invasion of privacy for me to even remotely think and ask or be part of that. And I think that's what we're talking about here. When you have the trust of a situation, that the memory is the thing that we're going to take with us. That's the important thing is like, and the relationship. I mean, to this day, I text with Alex, every couple of days or something. We have this big brother. I have this brotherly relationship with him that it far exceeds talking about music or anything like that. He's philosophical. We see life very similarly in a lot of ways. He's a super deep thinker. We're talking Carl Jung often or whatever. And with Ed, it was also a different thing too. Like, Ed was a big lover. He was just a big old lover. I mean, he was that guy that would kiss you, when he saw it, when you.
Oh yeah.
I've heard that multiple times. Yeah.
I have a really funny story because when we were on tour doing the first tour and we were at Madison Square Garden, and I'm coming from the mix position to the side of the stage where Maddie's got his guitar, rig, and Ed's coming off the stage. And Live Nation would do these walkthroughs where people would pay a lot of money to go to sound check and they'd get pics and they'd be able to walk around the backstage and stuff like that. So there was a walkthrough happening of about 50 people, and Ed's coming down the steps to the guitar station and I'm coming toward the station, and Ed comes to give me a kiss, except it's one of those moments where, you don't turn your head. He turns his head, I turn my head. Next thing I know, we're macking with each other. And, and, this Live Nation, 50 people, these Live Nation are looking at me like I'm making out with Ed. It was hilarious. It was like, those aren't pillows, Yeah. But, that's the thing, this a trust thing where when you have trust, it's the thing that you can't equate it into words even sometimes. It's
Yeah.
the thing that allows Dave to tell someone that maybe he's not digging their tone, or maybe I can help you with it. I don't know. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? It's like you got to have that relationship that allows you to be able to be a service to somebody and not just
you
their asshole.
also have to read and know the situation.
Yeah.
Certain people you can do that with. Other people you would never do that with.
Right.
And, I remember, particularly the Van Halen camp, I remember it was like, let him tell you what he wants.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's unless you're asked, it's not your job to tell him what you think.
Yeah.
Unless you're asked, and then if he wants an opinion, that's a different story.
Giorgio Moroder had a good one. He would always say to me because I was super green when I was working with Giorgio. I learned a lot. That was a period of the 80s where I had gotten into the studios. Richie Zito was super influential. I had a handful of people who were super influential. Rumbo Studios was sort of the home base that I was able to make. And the great thing about Rumbo is he had all styles of music being recorded there. We did Rat and Dio, but we, Fleetwood Mac and REO Speedwagon, and it was owned by the Captain Tennille. So I helped them design a new PA system, monitor system and stuff. But Richie Zito brought me down to Marauders, and then, working at Marauders, there were a couple of times where I would offer my opinion or start to offer my opinion. And Giorgio would go, no. Don't think, just do. Don't think, just do. And I learned a lot in that. It's like, no, let me do the thinking. I'm going to tell you what I want and deliver me that. Just give that.
So how did you, so you mentioned, all right, so Matt Bruck contacted you for working with Van Halen.
Well, one time, yeah, my name was on a Post-it note in the studio. But the first thing I did with Ed was we did a guitar solo on a Roger Waters song in the somewhere in the 90s. And Ed played the solo on that, on this Roger Waters song. And I was working at the record plant, and I'll be honest, without going too deep, I wasn't really ready at that point in my life to work with someone who would stay up all night doing drugs. Yeah, it wasn't well then. And my well-being and my family life and my career were more important than that gig. So a guy named Rob Stieglitz took that gig, and they put the 9000 series console, which I don't think was the smartest move. All that, I have an opinion about a lot of shit, but we're not going to talk about that. Bottom line is, it took a few years for Ed to get a little better. And then I came on board and worked for a few years to get a different kind of truth to the place where we could actually, there's so much I can't and don't really want to say. I'll just be honest.
Yeah. Whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah. What I will say is, I developed a trust with Wolf, Ed, and Al, where they could count on me. And there were a lot of dramatic situations because you're dealing with the first record in,
years,
decades with David Lee Roth, and the relationships aren't, particularly great. And the ultimate goal is to get that record done somehow. And I am proud that I was part of that,
I was so excited, Ross, when that album was, obviously when it was talked about, publicized, hey, it's being worked on, this is something that's kind of come out. I mean, I was so excited to get it and listen to it that day. When the tracks leaked, online, I was like, oh, I gotta listen, So I thought it sounded great, you know, and you guys did a great job, just so you know. Like,
well, I mean, it's the heaviest record they've ever made. I mean, that was one of the things. Like Wolf brought his
oh yeah,
alternative rock sensibility to the bass sounds, and when you have a bass sound, when he wanted a lot of distortion on the bass. When you have that much distortion on the bass, how do you get the bass and then the guitars? And then Alex will always want his drums to sound like John Bonham, so, but he always sounds like himself to me. He likes, it's just funny because I don't think there's any drummer that has a more distinctive drum sound, than,
agreed. The snare, my God.
Yeah. And it's like, it's so weird because people had all this misconception about, he gaffers tapes, no, it's a superphonic wide open. It's a 6.5 Ludwig superphonic, just wide open, and he's got, because I mean, there are records where he had, I guess, rototoms or dragon drums and all this other stuff. And when he goes on tour, it was always like double kick drums and the gong and all this stuff, but that was all for show. The ultimate drum kit is basically a John Bonham, 1 up, 1 down, or 1 up, 2 down.
Right.
And not like 14 crash cymbals. He's like, Alex is like a jazz drummer playing rock. He doesn't, and it goes back to Bonham. If you look at like videos of Bonham, and for me as a drummer and a drum tech, when you look at heads, like having recorded drummers like Kenny Aronoff for decades, Kenny's one of the hardest hitting drummers, and he changes his drum heads like in the middle of like, he'll do 3 or 4 takes and then he has to change his heads. He just mauls them.
Right.
Bonham never mauled his drum heads. If you look at a drum head, the Mylar on a drum head, when it goes out, it goes out to the outside and it has a dirt ring. That's a head that's been on that drum for like months.
Right. And it doesn't have dents in it, right? It's been played, but it's not beaten to death.
Yeah, you don't get the look of that drum. Like if you're coming over the shoulder when he's playing Moby Dick or something on any of these more recent, videos and stuff, and you're looking at the drum heads, there's the center of where you see it's like been worn, and then the outside ring of the toms are dirty with this dirt ring of the Mylar, coming off. You don't get like that from changing your heads every day or 2 days or whatever. And so that happens in it, you can hear about it in these discussions with Led Zeppelin, where they talk about Bonham and the whip of his wrist. And I learned that with Jim Keltner, because Keltner is a lot of these drummers from from that era of the 60s and 70s would balance themselves in the overheads because you weren't miking every drum, originally. And so they would balance themselves by how they hit. So they're going to hit the toms harder and the cymbals lighter.
Right.
Because the cymbals are going to sing more when you hit them lighter, and the toms are going to ring more when you whip your wrist, and and it's a whip, and that's the way Alex plays. Alex is, you watch him, his wrists are whipping. He's not sticking the stick into the head and laying it on the head where it kills the tone.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a whip, and that's where that tone comes from, particularly also on the snare. So it's just all this misunderstanding of how drums are played and recorded, and honestly, the simplicity of his kit, even for me coming in, I was like, wow, I can't believe that this is like such a simple kit, and he makes the most out of the tones of like not needing the extra tom. It's just how he's hitting the toms, and
did he use a Ludwig kit that he typically used? Okay.
Yeah. It was a simple Ludwig kit with a Ludwig 6.5, a couple of his favorite 6.5 superphonics.
See, I can sit and talk drums all day. I actually just got a drum set.
Oh, well, yeah. See, I've done a lot of Tama. I mean, because Kenny's a Tama guy, so I was recording Tama's, Kenny was with Tama early days of the 80s. I like Tama. I mean, I'm a drum guy too. I'm a guitar guy. I'm a drum guy.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I love it. I've been playing drums since I was a kid, and then I stopped. My back started getting really sore, and for years of playing drums for years, and I was like, I love music too much. Let me pick up guitar. So I did that about 30 years ago. I'm playing guitar for about 30 years. But yeah, I love drums. So, but enough about me. I, I'm super interested. So, if as much as you can talk about it, so you worked with John Shanks on that album. Like, what was the role between
No, what
you
happened
and?
was we basically made a record, and then Dave said, "I want a producer," and the band was like, "We have a record. It just needs to get mixed." Like,
I see.
Dave,
Okay.
"Oh, we need a producer." So they started auditioning producers, Rick Rubin and Brennan O'Brien, and yeah, it was an interesting process. So they eventually went down to John had himself camped out at Henson. Dave loves working at Henson. He was there. He's been in and out of, well, it's A&M. So he's been in and out of A&M. He was in and out of A&M for years and years, and so he had gotten to know John because John's had his room posted up there, and
Right.
so they bonded, and they started, and they worked down there for about 6 weeks, and then things changed, and we'll just leave it there.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Um,
I'm just gonna leave it there.
No problem. No problem. Talking guitars and how you recorded the guitars and what amps were used. Can we talk about that for the album?
Yeah, absolutely. Ed, Ed had, and Dave can, Ed's always been, from like always, but, Ed is a tinkerer. He loves, and I say it's weird to talk about him in past tense because I still think of him in present tense. It's like still hard for me to think that he's gone. But I always, Ed's workshop up in 5150, and then for years him and Matt, and then Dave and this team of people have been working on amps, going back to PV and then 5150, then the Fender,
Right.
and so I'm not particularly super versed in the business of all that. All I know is that being an amp guy too, one of the things that I really loved about Ed and Maddie is that they were constantly working on something new. And so for me, Ed's sound and I'll just say this, like the Van Halen community is absolutely freaking fanatical in such a
That's great.
it's
Yes.
like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
the level of crazy obsession where people's opinions, like, I mean, there's some
I know.
people that go, man, I fucking love that record. There's other people that go, if I ever meet you on the street, I'm going to beat the shit out of you because I hate that record so much.
Bro, I've lost friends in the Van Halen community because it's just so. In some ways, it's toxic. In some ways,
Yeah.
it's so fanatical and so crazy. In some ways, that people just get nuts.
Well, on the positive side, like Phil X, I was Phil X's first friend here in LA. Like before LA. I met him in Mississauga in like 1990. I was up there making a record, funny enough, with Corky Lang, the drummer in Mountain. And he was the head of A&R for Mercury Polygram. And so he had a band, played in a band. I went up to Triumph's studio, to Gil and Mike's studio, and met Phil. He just joined Triumph. He and I bonded over like just everything, friendship, being kooky. And I just fell in love with him. And he's been one of my dearest, and my wife, one of our dearest friends. Like, I was like, if you ever come to LA, you have a place to stay. And he would take us up on it. At that point, he had a first girlfriend became his wife. There, now he's with the mother and his children, and he's awesome, and Lindy, and it's a beautiful thing. It's where I saw Dave a few weeks ago.
Yeah, that's really nice.
And the reason I bring up Phil is that Phil is one of the most fanatical Van Halen fans, people, period. And one of the highlights of my relationship with Phil and was to be able to get him to come up to 5150, see the studio. I invited him to hang out with Ed, and we hung out at the Roxy one night when Wolf was playing with Tremonti, and so to be able to introduce Phil to Ed and that whole thing was really special. And I'm glad I got to be able to do those things. And now that Ed's gone, but to go back to the conversation about guitar amps and stuff. One of the things that I started doing in the 80s was record guitars with ribbon mics, like Motley Crue Girls, 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 which I helped engineer. The lead engineer on that and co-producer is a guy named Dwayne Barron. And so I got to work on that record, and I sort of turned Dwayne onto ribbon mics. And unfortunately, the thing about ribbon mics back then, RCAs, particularly if you got them too close, you blew them up. So I had a revolving account with a company called ENAC, which is Kane spelled backwards. Clarence Kane, and now his son, Clarence Kane Jr., they were and are the re-ribboners of RCA, of ribbon mics. So back then, I was already using ribbon mics because they hear sound the way our ears hear. That's the way a ribbon works, because the way a human hears, our tympanic membrane, moves, creates an impulse, sends a wave to our brain, and that's what we hear as sound. Ribbon mics do a similar thing where it's a ribbon, air moves the ribbon, creates an electrical impulse, sine wave, sends it to a transformer, and we then boost the sound with a preamp, and we hear sound. So ribbon mics have a way, and they're also figure eight because of that pattern. They hear what's in front and behind. They tend to reproduce sound very naturally. It's a natural sound. And I love the sound of ribbon mics on electric guitars. So I started using ribbon mics in the 80s. And I'd be blowing them up, and I'd be sending them, getting them re-ribboned and back. And so if you cut to then the 90s, a company called Royer came out and was coming out with a microphone you could put up against a grill cloth and use in conjunction with a 57, which is sort of like the mic that everyone's always used on guitars because it can take the abuse. But it's 57 alone is usually not the most pleasing sound on its own. It's nice to blend it with something, but to get it in phase with something is always the key, because if you take a mic and you get it too close and you want a mic in the 57, and then you're blowing up the mic that's the condenser or whatever. So the thing about the ribbon mic, the Royer, you could get it up with a 57 and you could have it in phase, and it gave you that lower mid and sort of fatter frequencies. So when I came into Ed's world, Ed was always a great engineer. He had great instincts, and he'd also watched Don Landy, and he'd watch, who, God rest his soul, passed away a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
In the studio with Michael McDonald the day after Don Landy passed away, and Michael was the one that told me, "Yeah, man, Don just passed away last night." It was sad, but Don is one of the greatest engineers that America's ever had. Along with Tom Dowd and Al Schmidt, and all those guys they liked ribbon mics, and so I learned about ribbon mics, and so the Royers, I'd been using Royers for quite a while when I came into 5150 with the mics, and you don't come into Ed's world and just like Dave said,
don't tell him what to use.
Yeah, you don't come in and just go, well, this is what you should use. You come in and you assess what's going on, and what Ed was doing was he had a couple of 57s on a couple of speakers into an API 550 AEQ with like a shit gob of 50 cycles just lopped onto that 57. And basically a 57, you can only add so much low end to a 57. You're not going to, you can just keep turning that 50 cycles up to the max. You're only going to get so much out of that, but it was more than it would have without it. But so the first thing I kind of noticed was that Ed likes he wants low end, but he is maybe there's this possibility of adding a microphone into there, like a mic like the Royer. And so that was a thought I had, and then he was only using one of his heads, but he has all these heads he's in designing. He's got the 50 watt, and he's got, and he's got his other heads, and he's got his old head and the new head. And so one of the things that through gaining trust and having that relationship where you can say something to someone and they'll listen to you, ultimately what we got into was, and because he would split that with, harmonizers, like, because you don't want it just mono coming down the center with nothing on it. So it's obvious that you want to spread it out because you got to get it away from the vocal, the kick drum, the snare, and the bass, because that's what they did on the first record. They had the dry sound and the wet sound over here.
Right.
And that's that hilarious story of, Don cuts the first lacquer on the first record and they go listen to it in Pasadena, except their friends
speaker is out. Yeah.
Blocking the speaker. So all they hear is reverb. They call Don up and they're like, the mixes are horrible. It's all reverb because all the dry sound was being blocked by the couch, and it's a funny story, but true story. So then Ed, he had a paranoia about doing it that way. And he wasn't really particularly thrilled with what people call that sound, even though people that are Van Halen fanatics love that sound. Ed didn't. You can say, right, Dave? Ed didn't love that sound.
No, he didn't love that sound, but that's his iconic sound. So it's like kind of funny.
Yeah.
But did they repeat that on Van Halen 2 though, where it was?
Yeah.
It was the same thing on 2 as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I forget that. Yeah.
Yeah. So he then went into eventide harmonizers and AMS delays with some had a very specific thing, so I brought the concept of they had these splitters, and I knew these splitters because AC/DC had them. They're and I don't know who made them, but AC/DC had a handful of them because I was around on a Fraser engineering gig where Fraser had them and was using them on AC/DC, and that the Australian guy Brent, who's the guitar rental guy, had them, and they were Brett Allen, super transparent splitters, like. Because that's the one thing with a splitter, like most splitters, you can hear the change in tone when you go into them. Dumble hand built these splitters for our cross staging with Little Feat and Lindley and Jackson, and to do splitting, if you don't do it right, it loads and then it just fucks up the sound, and you can hear it. And even Jonathan Little's Little Labs PCP, it works really well, but I hear the tonal change when I use that.
Sure.
Bonamassa turned me on to a passive one last year that acts really good. I forget the name of it. But anyway, not selling gear here today, but except Friedman amps. Buy Friedman. Right now, go to 1-800-FRIEDMAN. No, we're going to take a little gear break. No. So they had these splitters. They had a couple of them that were like the best you could ever get.
Yeah, they were made in Canada.
Yeah, you know which ones I'm talking about.
I can't think of the name, but they were made in Canada. I know the ones. Like everyone had them at the time.
They're super transparent. You don't hear anything. And that's what we started to do. I started to get Ed to have fun, like, go down into the he had his gear, vault. Why don't we pull out a couple of amps and let's start fucking around and let's blend, a couple of amps into a couple of cabs, because the whole mission is with Ed, it was always like, rarely is there a rhythm guitar.
Right.
That's the legendary story of making Van Halen 1. They go in and they say to Ed, well, don't play any of the solos. he's never not played solos because it's just a power trio. It's like, so what Alex does over the solos is totally dependent on what Ed's playing. If Ed goes, Alex goes, so now they start cutting songs, except no one knows what to play. And these songs are falling on their face because Ed's kind of being made to play like a rhythm guitar player where he's going to like double himself, except you got to take all the squeals out and all that good shit when you're going to double yourself. Because you have to like have a photographic memory of every single bar you played if you're going to play it like for real.
Right. Double it. Yeah.
That's why a lot of, music is that, rhythm guitar, and you double guitars, and they're, you guys that can like, they know how to do that, still have personality, but not the amount of personality that Ed has, where the squeal and the thing and the murn, So they cut for a couple hours on the first record, and Don Landy and Ted Templeman are looking at each other going, wow, we thought this band was awesome. Now they kind of suck, and then finally it was sort of the epiphany of like, we got to just let him play and let him solo and do his thing. And so then the necessity of figuring out how you have one guitar be, in the spectrum across the speakers, not just come out of the center. So that was sort of my thing, was like, okay, what if we have 2 amps and 2 heads and they breathe? And then I get into like how we're going to mic up the 2 cabinets. And then I bring in the ribbon mics to the conversation, where I say to Ed, over here on the APIs, you've got all this EQ on the 57s. You open to trying a mic that you may not have heard, and we put it right up on the 50 next to the 57. It'll be perfectly in phase. And we'll just put it on a separate set of faders. And that's where Ed would push up the 57s, and he'd push up the Royers, and he'd do this, and he just looks over and he's just smiling, because I go, we're going to get all the EQ off the 57s. They're going to be flat, and the Royers are going to be flat. And just think of the Royers like low end.
Was it their 121s?
Yeah.
Okay.
A week later, they gave me these prototypes of what are now the 122Vs, which are the tube ribbons that have more reach and just more detail. And so that record is made with the 122Vs and 57s next to each other. And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and then he took them on tour because he wanted them on the road.
So when you was blending the amps, did he use like the old Plexi in any of that stuff, or was it mostly the newer EVH and older 51?
Oh, it was all sorts of stuff.
Okay.
Some of the some sections of songs he would specifically want to be smaller. There were, not everything was done all the way down, all as one take. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Things were tracked sometimes that way, but there were times when he would want like a verse to get smaller, and then other times those smaller verses would be the cleaner channels on the, because the EVHs, those, he was playing around. They hadn't released the 50 watts yet.
I've got a question for you because I don't know if it's been discussed on, like, I'm trying to remember the song, but it's where like there's all this like static and noise in the beginning of it. And yeah. What was that? Like, just out of curiosity.
Noise and static.
But where did it come? Like, how did that come from? Like, where? Like, just out of curiosity, like, where did they come up with that to put that on the record?
That came initially. That is one of because we had started the record with Patrick Leonard, because Ed and Patrick's kids were the same, like Jordy, who is the same age as Wolf. They were in Lamaze classes together, and so Patrick and Ed were like, had this brotherly relationship, and Patrick had this idea of this just wacky, crazy intro of noises and a pastiche of colors and sounds and stuff. And so we built that. It was just, it's just built.
Yeah, what I'm talking about is if people want to hear it. I don't know if people can hear. Yeah, I was like, what is going on?
Bullet Head, right?
Actually, no, that's it's Honey Baby Sweetie Doll.
Well, Honey Baby, yeah, that one. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, not Bullet Head. Yeah, so that was
cool.
Yeah, it was a creative choices, creative decisions. Yeah.
Cool. You know what? It's good time for us to do a quick sponsor break. Guys, make sure you check out Sweetwater. We've got a link below, which is our affiliate link. You click on that link below, and then you can buy anything you'd like on Sweetwater. Gives a little kickback.
Buy some gear like Ross has.
Exactly.
Please.
Yep. Big gear. Buy it. And so, yeah, check out Sweetwater. Big fans of Sweetwater. They sponsor our show. Thank you for Sweetwater. And then also Thomann. Make sure you guys check out Thomann. I'm a big fan of Thomann now.
Especially since they're suing Fender.
Yeah, they're suing Fender. Thomann.
And the crazy thing about Thomann is they're a $1.5 billion company.
Mm-hmm.
And Fender is, well, they said 500 million, but actually someone else told me it's more like 700 million. But yeah, that's crazy. I mean, Thomann's like almost 3 times the size.
Yeah, Thomann's like, fuck you.
They're the big gorilla.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. I love to see even
we'll see how that comes out.
Yeah, hopefully it'll work in the right favor. But yeah, Thomann. Check out Thomann.com. We also have an affiliate link below if you guys purchase something from Thomann. We fully support them, so please do that. And then also legendarytones.com. Make sure you guys check out their Evo hot mod, the Tim Caswell hot mod, and also the Mr. Scary hot mod. We thank David and Legendary Tones for supporting the show. So, and then also we've got some super chat questions. So, well, I might dive into these real quick.
First one, of course, is for me.
Of course. Sloppy fingers. Happy Friday, guys. For Dave, I have the PT1. PT1?
V1.
What's that?
Pink Taco V1.
Okay, got it. How did you make it sound bigger than an EL84 amp should sound? The tranny. P.S. Mark, my Sens fleeced your Panthers with that recent trade. Oh, I know, man. Bye-bye, Brady. Yeah.
Well, to be honest, the power section of that amp was just a kind of a straight up copy of an old vintage 20-watt Marshall head from the 70s. Which, by the way, those sound huge.
They sound great.
So I didn't really do too much magic, and then other than that, it's just voicing the amp for that power section, the preamp and stuff. Just use my ears. Use my ears. It sounds good.
Yeah, it doesnn't sound like your typical EL84. Like you buy like a Vox Night Train or something.
See, they have a different idea. Okay, look, a commercially available Vox amp like that's made today is just
crap.
Just not good, especially if it's a cheaper one. Especially if you're saying a Night Train or something. Come on.
Yeah.
It's just not that great. I mean, even their hand wired series of amps, as far as I understand, they're not even made in England or anything. They're also made in Asia somewhere. So, the Vox is a totally different amplifier. It's not the same thing at all, And a Vox can sound huge.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
A good vintage Vox. Oh my God.
Flush 84. What's going on? Thank you, Dave. I think I remembered you saying once that Rammstein uses rectifiers, but uses them like Ingalls. What did you mean by that?
No, never said that. Rammstein used to use angles, or not angles, used to use rectifiers. But yeah, I have no idea what this means because I didn't say that.
Okay.
Sorry.
And then for the VX30, will it be possible to get it made in the same color scheme as the BE100 Deluxe Jose?
I knew someone would ask that. Probably. Sure. If you want it, sure.
Okay. Do you know any good amp techs in the Biloxi, Mississippi area? No.
I hardly know any good amp techs across the whole United States.
Yeah.
To be honest. I mean, I do know a handful of good ones, but
Where's Carl Popick? Where's
he's
he
in Las
located?
Vegas. He's great.
Right? Yeah.
Carl is amazing. I have an amazing guy, Chris Church, in the Toronto area in Canada. I mean, on the East Coast in New Jersey or something is Andy Fuchs. He's good for repairs. In Michigan, there's Bruce Egnator. I'm sure there's more that I'm not thinking of, but I'm running short.
Is Dave interested in building an amp specifically marketed to the modern metal player? I think he kind of did. Tight compressed Fender light cleans, too much gain, something to compete with the Uberschall's 5150s marks.
Sure. Could be. It's like, to be honest, the really heavy stuff, generally speaking, is a very limited market, and they don't like to pay for things that are very expensive. So, but yeah, sure. I mean, the closest thing to that would be the Butter Slacks amp that we already have.
That's what I was thinking.
Bill Keller from Mastodon. That's pretty heavy sounding.
Yeah.
A lot of gain, although it doesn't have the compressed Fender thing to it, but a lot of gain. You don't want a lot of gain. You don't want, and I'm sure Ross will go into this too. You want as little gain as you can get away with and still play.
You want tone. You want tone.
Because the more the more tube saturation you're throwing on it, the more compressed it gets, the smaller it gets, and then you just sound like a beehive. And that's not good. And and like some of the biggest, I mean, even working with heavier guys over the years, the guys that really could play and do really well, I found that even when they were big tuned down guitars and stuff, I found that it was more about the frequencies you were pushing on the amp than it was the amount of gain you were pushing on the amp. Because, the big heavy strings, you're going to use a lot of presence, and it's going to be set up the amp way brighter than a normal strung guitar. And you want some volume to it, so it really pushes a cabinet and it sounds heavy still, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a lot of gain.
Yeah, I got into that whole science project in the late 90s when there came a point for me where, having made some really, having worked with artists where you have to make the record sound really good, when you work with Roger Waters or the Black Crowes or Jewel, these, Kev Moe, these are records where I was not, like, pardon me, but not fucking shit up. And so I was asked to produce some of the new metal stuff, like for Roadrunner, like Cold Chamber,
right,
where I could actually, we were recording guitars tuned down to even, like, we had one song in G, so I got into the whole science project with Eric Gorish. I think that was his name, Eric, Yamaha, where we were designing what became the Drop 6 guitar, which was, because I was good friends and am good friends with Zach, but he was playing a Les Paul and digging out the nut and using like a 68 on a Les Paul. But unless you want to gouge out the nut, and it's almost impossible to, very few people can keep a guitar in tune that low. And you don't want to use baritones because they just don't play the same. So that whole design of the Drop 6, the neck that's made to be tuned in B or C sharp drop D or any of those low tunings, that was a science project. And then dealing with the 70s, the Celestions that could push that much low end, because even vintage 30s would collapse. With, I mean, I don't know what your experience is of that, but
Yeah.
that kind of volume and that kind of, level of, but it wasn't about how much like over the top distortion. It wasn't about that. It was about just how to keep the speaker from collapsing, how to have it push the amount of air you want, the amps that would push the amount of air. So there were certain amps, that I had a hard time honestly recording. Like your guy was just talking about the Uberschall. I didn't find, for me, the Uberschall recorded particularly well. We tended to use, well, there were a lot of amps that we used, but the more distortion you had, the more things just bled together, and you really didn't get any. It wasn't defined. It was undefined.
Yeah, undefined. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because you want that. You don't want that. You want the sound of the pick and the string and that. So with too much of that, it's just like you said, it's like a beehive.
Did you have any of that discussion with Ed when recording for the last album? Just out of curiosity, and the use of gain, and because it probably was his most gained up.
Well, yeah, and I'll say something now that I'll just say honestly, that, because if when you're talking about that period of Ed's life, there were health issues, that he had struggled with, that he was going to struggle with. I mean, he was actually particularly healthy when we made a lot of the record, but, for him, he had hand problems, and, the more gain you have, the less work you have to, like the amps that he played in his early career, he couldn't play those amps as he went on into his career, because it takes more, it's hard work to play through a plexi or, yeah. I mean, Dave, you can speak to this yourself for me.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, he didn't want to work like that. He didn't want to work that hard. I remember him saying that.
Yeah, he said it in an interview, the actual interview. Yeah,
might have gone a little bit overboard with gain, but that's my own personal opinion. But.
And honestly, people. I mean, and I will take. I'm not someone who shirks responsibility on any level in my life about anything. I've learned how to apologize, make amends, change my behavior. I'm last month, 40 years of marriage. You don't stay married for 40 years in this business, being an asshole to your wife. And, I mean, we would be already done. So I take such a hit from people who are like, bag on me about shit. There's a part of my job, which is service. If the guy playing guitar is happy,
yeah, hell yeah,
I don't get to tell him he's wrong.
Right.
If the guy designed his own amp, builds his own guitars, he's in his own studio, and he's happy, what I'm going to tell him it's wrong? And that's the thing that people, like, they jump all over your shit and they go, oh, there's so much distortion and blah, 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 blah. And it's like,
I still liked it. I mean, I still loved it, how it sounded.
It's like, I actually, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to make excuses. It's a fucking heavy record. It was fun. And I have, and honestly, and I'll say this here, and I've said it in the past, the biggest success for me of that record was getting it done so that band could go on tour with David Lee Roth and get out on the road and actually have people go see them and enjoy a live Van Halen show for the first time in a long time. And for Ed and Al to go out and play with for Ed to play with his brother and his son, and for Alex to play with his brother and his nephew. I mean, what better thing in life to be able to be part of that and the success of actually pulling that record across the finish line, because a lot of records don't get finished inside of, some kinds of personality, disputes, squabbles, or whatever, So
yeah.
So for me, is it the best sounding record I've ever made? No. It's
But it was a miracle that the album even came out. So
Exactly.
yeah.
So hindsight. Yeah.
So
Anyway.
go ahead. Hindsight. What were you going to say?
Yeah. Hindsight is all the clarity in the world comes out of like hindsight, but you can't do anything about yesterday, and you can't really do much about tomorrow. It's about what am I going to do today, So I enjoy today. I'm enjoying life. I'm digging hanging with you guys, and and there are a lot of people who fucking dig that record, myself included.
I dig it absolutely.
Yeah. I'm not making any excuses.
No, it's great. I mean, and I went to go see the first show that they did in 2007 in Charlotte.
Oh, I was at many shows.
Yeah, well,
forcibly sometimes.
Yeah.
In the first tour, that 2007 tour.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Sure.
That's cool. Yeah. So let's go back a little bit. Talk about the Motley Crue stuff. So you worked on Girls, Girls, Girls.
Yeah.
So like, how was that? And back then, what were you doing? And that was early in your career, right?
Yeah, it was pretty. I mean, I started legitimately engineering. It was that period of the 80s was saying yes to everything. And I was part of Rumbo. Rumbo is a really amazing studio. We took the design.
Does it exist anymore?
No, I don't know what state the building is, even if it is. I haven't driven past Saticoy in a while, but it was owned by the Captain and Tennille. And we had two rooms, two main rooms, and a third we turned into a room for Jeff Lynne to be with Tom Petty, and they made Full Moon Fever and the other Petty record there. We cut the drums at 1-on-1, and then cut the guitars and the vocals and the main overdubs out at Rumbo, and then mixed at Conway. The drums were cut at 1-on-1 because the Black record had been recorded there.
Yeah.
And we set up a PA for the kick and snare and toms, and so the super explosive sound of the drums comes from that. It's a hyper room. You don't get that kind of room out of a room, so it's a hyper room. And I've done that. I did that a few times. I used to do that down at the complex where George Massenburg had built a complex, and they had PAs down there. They had, the Massenburg PAs. And I was like, you guys need to set these up so we can cut the drums through these, and like I was just saying, the guitars were cut through ribbon mics. And, Dwayne Barron had been he was sort of iconic LA metal. He came out of Pasha. Pasha did a lot of the metal records. And so Tom Werman was the producer. Dwayne was like the engineer, co-producer, and he had his partner. I forget John's last name, but he died of cancer, but he sang a lot of the high vocals. He was like the Tommy Funderburk was another name of people that would sing all the high vocals on metal records, so that, people like Vince, who sang their vocals, but needed some help back in the day. Now it's just Pro Tools, and, no one knows how records are made anymore. But back then, the hamburger helper actually had to be a physical person singing.
Yeah.
And so, God, I wish I could think of John's name, but John was a secret weapon. And it was great, man. Bands had to play in the 80s, regardless of whether you liked them or not, or what style of music. I mean, they were great players for that style of music. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mick Mars is a fucking killer guitar player, and Tommy Lee is an exciting drummer, and Nicky is a genius, mind for not only business but music. He wrote most of the material. I mean, again, like I in '86 I made a record with REM called Life's Rich Pageant, and most people don't even know that Mike Mills would sing all the second harmonies, come up with all the counterpoint. He was like the John Paul Jones until you understand Led Zeppelin. I mean, Jimmy Page is, absolutely a monkey genius guitar player and producer. But with John Paul Jones had been like the string arranger for like Bond, and Donovan and all. So you put him with a guy like with Jimmy Page, you're going to end up with, Led Zeppelin, besides Bonham and then Robert Plant. The same thing with REM, and then with Molly, you have this collective, but it really is based in one person's vision overall.
Right.
And it's always been Nicky's vision, and whether or not he was like overdosing, trying to kill himself, then that's another story. But, in the studio, everybody worked. It was work. It wasn't, there were records that maybe there was more partying than there is now, but in general, that record was like you work and then they partied. They worked, and then they would get on, and I had motorcycles back then. We would ride, and the thing about Rumbo, since it was way the heck out in the Outer Valley, it was a place to go work because it wasn't in Hollywood and people weren't coming to find it. They didn't know where it was. So we would work and then we get on our bikes and we'd ride in, and then we, keep the rainbow open until the sun came.
The guy's John Purdell.
Johnny Purdell. Yes. John Purdell, man. Purdell was such a secret weapon. He would be the one that was like coming up with these sneaky, like there's harmonies and stuff going on that record you didn't even know. The weird little stuff going on, and there's keyboard parts and all sorts of stuff, because it's a well-produced record. It's not just like meat and potatoes guitars and stuff.
Wow. Yeah, it seems like there were a bunch of actual backing vocalists on that album.
Yeah, Tommy Thunderberg is probably part of it too, right?
Yeah. Bob Carlisle, Dave Amato.
Dave Amato is Amato. I think is he playing still with REO Speedwagon? Do you know Amato?
Yeah. Or I think, if REO is playing anymore. I don't know if that's.
But he was with REO for quite a while.
Forever.
Yeah. That's cool. So when you were doing guitars back then for Mick, how were you recording it? Was it 57 all the way, or did you again have the 121? Or
no, they didn't exist. 121
didn't exist. Yeah, okay.
That's where I was talking about blowing up RCA mics.
Yeah. Oh, I gotcha.
Yeah,
gotcha.
I blew up a lot of RCAs, but I had RCAs to blow up, so they'd be coming back as they were going out.
And what about your work with Mellencamp?
So that the other person I was going to give cred to was Don Gaiman, because Gaiman, he liked the engineer that was one of my mentors was a guy named Greg Edward. Greg came down from Caribou Ranch with a design of a control room and became the house engineer. And Greg, he just saw something in me. I was in Rumbo doing something. I was bringing some gear in on a session, and Greg just saw something in me and offered me a permanent job at Rumbo. We hadn't yet completed Studio B, was still a shell, and he saw that I was someone that had carpenter skills and all sorts of skills and was like a hard worker. And I was doing everything I could to try to get off the road at that point, because my wife had said, like, if you don't get off the road, we're not staying together. And I wasn't married yet, but I knew that this was the one I didn't want to let get away. And like I said, we're now married 40 years, but we've been together longer. We started dating in around 79. So Greg offered me a job, Captain and Tennille. He was the one that was paying me. Daryl Dragon, they owned the studio. And so I went to work for the Captain and Tennille and for Rumbo. And we built Studio B. And Greg was John's engineer with Don Gaiman. And so I became an assistant engineer on and then we went and John wanted to build a studio for like that he still has now. It's called Belmont Mall, where he's done every record since Scarecrow. And we took the design of Studio B at Rumbo and basically took that exact design and plans. The same woodworker did the wood. And so if you're in Belmont Mall and you're in the control room, you're basically transported from Rumbo Studio B, which doesn't exist. But at the time it was cool because, you know, I knew that studio, but, you know, so anyway, it was Greg Edward that brought me into the Mellencamp world. And then he was not, he didn't have great people skills. He could piss people off. And so basically after Scarecrow, John was like, I don't want this guy around. And so I stayed moving forward with Mellencamp for quite a few years, working with John and then making other records like REM with Gaiman in Belmont. Because when we did Scarecrow and then the band went on the road, the studio was basically brand new. And so Gaiman was like, well, let's, you know, I'm going to find a band to put in here. And that's when we did Life's Rich Pageant back in Indiana. And then another Mellencamp, and then a guy named James McMurtry. And, you know, I was doing all sorts of stuff out of that. And that studio is still to this day, it's John's studio. And he also set up a rehearsal place to rehearse in the basically the other building. So
I've heard that he can be interesting to work with also.
Yeah, John's another one of those guys. It's, you know, he's hard to be around. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Kenny Aronoff talks about getting fired from.
Yeah, I mean, I was around when he fired the band and hired him back, you know. And Kenny is one of my dearest, closest buddies in life. I've probably recorded him as much, if not any other drummer, you know, Greg Bissonette too, probably. But yeah, Kenny, I mean, I've been in the bunker, you know, like when you go and you make records in Indiana where you're like 20 miles outside of town and that's all there is that and a basketball hoop. You know, you get really close.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. So let's see if we have other questions.
Yeah. And like with Kenny, it's like people are like, oh man, I love the Mellencamp's drum sound. It's like, yeah, well, when you put some mics around Kenny Aronoff, who is such an even hitter and his tuning, he's a percussion major. You know, he was an IU percussion major. He's not like some boneheaded drummer that doesn't know how to chart. He charts every song down to
he can read. Yeah, he's serious.
Yeah. And he like has charts on everything he's ever done. He keeps his charts. It's really cool. Someday those, you know, like file cabinets full of charts. Yeah, it's so cool. And so with Kenny, man, I just love that guy, man. He's like the Energizer Bunny. He's just got so much energy.
Yeah, and especially for his age, you know, he's still pounding away and touring. He's
yeah,
amazing.
Nothing like these guys, man. I mean, musicians are just, man, I'm the luckiest guy on the planet. Come on, you know, look what we get to do, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Walrus wants to know how Dave was back in the old days. Ross, back in the early days, did Dave stand up and declare that one day he would start Friedman amps?
I didn't do that. I didn't even know at the time, way back in the day, that I would even do amps.
Yeah, we didn't give Dave like the T-shirt that says "World Domination." It took a long time for him to wear that
but
T-shirt.
I worked for it and I got it.
He earned that T-shirt.
Yeah, and I fucking wore so many hours. Jesus,
you know,
rig building and amp building. Jesus,
you know what?
Decades.
It talks about hard work pays off, man. You know, like if you put into it and you really work hard, you know, it will pay off. I just had that experience with my son, teaching him how to work hard, and he's been doing stuff for the summer. He actually got a job offer for when he graduates college next year. Yeah, he heard from the station that he's been working with. He wants to be a sports announcer and stuff like that. So they're going to get him involved. And so, yeah, like I said to him even today, I'm like, see, hard work pays off, man. You busted your ass.
If there's anything as a parent that you want to do and instill into your kids is a work ethic, and to understand that nothing good comes for free. Even God-given natural talent, you know, anybody could have natural God-given talent, but it's like taking that and working with that and putting the time and energy into that and having a work ethic that where when you actually earn it, when you've put the time and energy, you really appreciate it more than if it was just given to you. And that's not even a money thing, because there are plenty, like, I mean, I'll just say it out loud, like, when you're Wolf Van Halen, you're not hurting for money, like straight up. But
Right.
that fucking guy works for it.
Hard. Yeah.
He is a hard working dude. And he, was given like some God-given talent. There's no two ways about it, but he has worked for it. And he has put in the time with a work ethic, and it shows, and he makes really good music. And so I don't know. I just believe in the work ethic. I come from a working class mentality, and I believe parents do their kids a disservice by trying to always slide the pillow underneath so it softens the fall when the kids are going to fall. Let them fall. Let them skin their knees. Let them, get a little busted up here and there, because you're going to get back up and you will have learned it. Like, oh, okay, and then earn it. So that's. I think Dave comes from, and I mean, I'll be honest, like if you grow up in, not that Detroit just by its natural thing but it's a working class freaking town.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's not Beverly Hills, it's
just that I'm always convinced, it's nothing's ever going to be handed to you. Even if you're talented, doesn't mean you'll be successful.
No.
You need to bust your ass to do it. Yep. You need to not take no for an answer and keep at it, and keep going for whatever it is that interests you or what you want to do,
Yeah, and you better get along with people too. In most cases,
that's hugely important.
Yeah, and learn to, learn the game,
we were talking about Alex, since a lot of our conversation seems to have gone into the Van Halen realm, and I'm cool with that. I could talk about so much more, but if it just seems like we were on that, I'll just say something else about Alex. Like some of my most enjoyable moments with those guys were not in the music making. It was in the control room when nothing was really going on. We were taking a break or whatever. It'd just be Alex and I. And Alex loves pontificating. He loves telling stories. He loves pushing you, asking questions. And I've told this, numerous times. He turns to me and he goes, "Okay, Ross," because he loves going. I don't know if you remember this, Dave, but he loves going bingo. Like when he asks you a question and you nail the answer, he goes bingo. So he goes, "Okay, Ross, quick question. Music business. Is it about music or business?" Now, knowing that it's an Alex question, I'm like, yeah, Alex, knowing it's like you asking me that question, I'm already know that it's like its own like trick question. So I already know the answer is neither. So give me a moment. Let me think about it, and I pause and I think about it. And he had said one word. So I didn't answer one word. I come back to him and I go, the only thing I can think about here is getting along with people. And he goes, almost, and he hasn't bingoed me yet. And I go, all right, I want a bingo on this one. So give me another moment. And then it comes to me and I go, connection. And he goes, bingo. And then he takes it and he goes off to the races. And he basically tells a story of like when they started playing in Pasadena, they were not a good band. You got this guitar player here and this, drummer here, and they're mammoth, but they're not. But when they started to connect and do those backyard parties, and DLR with his insanity and all that, and they're connecting, and they go down to Gazzari's. Now they're really connecting. He goes, that's where we learned early on it was about connection. It wasn't about music or the business. It was about connecting, and everything was going to come from that. And if you look at it that way, that really is the truth. Because even at the US Festival with 1 million people, because I was on the side of the stage, I was working with Clare Brothers that day.
Oh, wow.
That weekend. Because I had become an A1 for Clare Brothers, and in that one period of time. When you think about the connection that was made, Dave is notoriously drunk off his ass that day, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter. Like it wasn't about, oh, that was the greatest show he ever sang or anything. No, it was the way they figured out how to connect. It was how they created a video even of this fake backstage with camels and sand and all that shit that was like didn't even exist. They had done that 2 weeks before. Or they created the way they came in on to Anaheim on one of their shows. They dropped fake.
Oh, they looked like they were parachuting in,
Yeah, but they were waiting in a van. They were waiting in the van. They weren't the parachuters.
Yeah,
right,
they
exactly.
Were waiting in the van with piss buckets and shit. And we had to sit in that van for like 8 hours or whatever. It was all about the connection. It was all about making a connection. And so when I think about that, it's the thing that a lot of people miss. They get so caught up in the minutia of like, and we can go on for days. EL34s over 6L6s over this, over that, blah, 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 blah. But are you connecting? Like when you get out in front, is your music connecting? Are you connecting? And now with social media, it's a whole nother story. It's now we're off into the races in a whole different conversation. But I still think to this day, that's what it is. It's always going to be that. Is like, are you connecting? And how are you connecting? Right. And then you have the music and the business. And that's that bingo where he goes, bingo, And I love those moments with him because it was like, I still to this day, I will never lose that moment when I'm thinking about it. When I'm making a record and I close my eyes, and then the speakers don't lie. We can all justify and try to convince ourselves our such a shit, but man, the speakers don't lie. They really don't. Either you're connecting or you're not connecting when you're listening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Second part of this question, Dave, was does the Steve Stevens 100 have more gain than the BE 100?
Oh, it's about the same.
Okay.
I mean, I guess with the saturation switch, the BE 100 would be more, but without the saturation switch, it's about the same.
Gotcha. Let's talk about the Black Crowes. How is it working with them? I'm glad to see them back out and touring and playing.
I'm a huge fan.
Me too.
And that was an interesting moment. Coming in, those guys just weren't getting along at the time.
Oh, really?
Chris and Rich it was funny. Oh my God! But they found a way to get on. What's that?
You're notorious for that. So
yeah, but I love that band, and that was still with Steve,
Gorman
was it? Yeah. Fun band.
Yeah, I really liked him on drums with that band.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, and he wasn't really like a trained drummer, but there's just something about the way that he plays in the pocket with them. He's great. Like that first album, some of his drumming on the first album was just fantastic. I just and then the second album too with Southern Harmony.
And again, this is one where I think Ollie Freed is a killer guitar player, but there was something about that other ensemble, Mark Ford, and there was ensemble that had more connection, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'll just say, but they're just projects you work on. You get to feel grateful that you got to work with this band or that. Maybe not the most highly memorable of my career, but was good. Like
Gotcha.
there's certain like Mellencamp, learned a shitload, very memorable. REM's really memorable. Van Halen, Motley Crue, Keb life of, you know, like we've been doing shit for 30 plus years, you know. Edgar Winter, really deep relationship with Edgar, making a new record with him. I've got Eric Gales coming in this weekend, going to record with him.
Fantastic.
I just saw him on Rick Beato. He was amazing.
Yeah, so I have him. We're in NRG on Monday, and you know, recording, and yeah. So I mean, I'm still kicking it, dude. You know, the shit we're talking about, even, you know, Van Halen. That's what we're in 2026. That was like 6, 7, 8, 9. You know, that was like 20 years ago already. You know,
Isn't that crazy?
You
Time
know,
flies, man.
Ziggy Marley, "Love Is My Religion." We won the Grammy for that. That was 20 years ago. You know. I just, you know, Ziggy was just texting me a month or whatever ago going, "Hey, it's been 20 years since we made Love Is My Religion." I'm like, the fuck? I'm going to be dead in 20 years. You know, it's like, I got to get working or stay working. You know?
It's crazy when you think about how, like, 20 years, oh my God, it just flew by, you know, 2006.
But what gets crazy is when you say, I'm going to be dead in 20 years, you know, you're a certain age and you go, I could very well be dead in 20 years.
Yeah.
That's why you truly have to enjoy today without getting all fucking metaphysical about it and stuff.
Absolutely.
Man, you know, Warren Zevon nailed it when he said, enjoy every sandwich.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people take sandwiches for granted.
Yeah.
You know, they want the steak and the sushi and the whatever, but man, whatever, I'm having a sandwich. Well, enjoy it, you know. Even if it's a PBJ, make it a killer PBJ and love it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Absolutely.
I mean, it's like, again, I mean, I've done all, I mean, before I got into, like, you know, doing what I did and then doing what I do, like, I don't want a roof ever again. You know, I think of guys that are carrying shingles up a ladder to a roof and stuff, like, man, I did that in the hot sun up in Oregon. I don't want to ever do that. You know, I don't even want to drive a 22-foot bobtail for days on end, man, you know, bouncing my kidneys off up and down the road. I mean, there's shit that we do, but you pay your dues and you do it so that you can be grateful when you don't.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, 100%. 100%.
So
you mentioned winning a Grammy. So how did that feel, and what did that mean to you, since you spent decades, you know, in the studio working, and win something like that?
Well, you know, the first one was super cool. And then you realize that it's just another day, because the winning of it, like the day you win, like I have never been at the Grammys and won any of the Grammys I've won. So the first one, you know, you win, but I'm working. And so, you know, you get a phone call, this pre-cell phones, you get a phone call and it's like, you know, the artist is giving you a shout out from the stage, you know, oh, that's cool. You know, I got to go. I'm working, you know? And then, you know, I am, you know, my mom who's not alive anymore, she appreciated them honestly more than I did, because she got to say, oh, my son, Grammy winner, you know. And then when I would go back and I'd be around all her girlfriends, and she, you know, they'd be like, oh,
She was proud, the proud mom. Yeah.
Rossi, you know, this is my son, Rossi, you know. But yeah, no, it's cool. The last one I won, which was for the Edgar Winter Brother Johnny, that was very meaningful, because Edgar had never won a Grammy, you know. So yeah, I got him with, you know, Ziggy Marley and with Keb and Tajmo but the Edgar, that was a long project. You know, we have every bucket list of guitar players on that record. So it was working with lots of pals, and it's, you know, a meaningful record because Johnny was a huge part of my upbringing. I used to go see him all the time in New York at, you know, Fillmore East or the Capitol Theater, and, you know, him and Edgar. So to win that Grammy, I just happened to be sick and have COVID, so I didn't get to go. So I didn't get to walk Edgar up on stage. But yes, it's you know, the accomplishment is in the work. I say this that not that I'm taking anything away from the winning of a Grammy or having platinum records or any of that stuff, but if you don't have some self-esteem or somehow have some self-respect, no winning or any kind of anything, is going to make you feel better about yourself. It really doesn't. It's more the work has to be the reward.
Yeah.
Because the result is already like, if you make a great record and the artist is happy and says, this is the happiest I've ever been, and make a record that honors his brother. When for me, the last brother I lost was in 2017, and he was the one that was like turning me on to Johnny. So to make that record win a Grammy and have Edgar go, this is the happiest, and you helped me win a Grammy. I can feel success and feel good about that.
Yeah.
And then it just becomes another thing that kind of looks good on paper, is on the, behind me over here and whatever, and I don't self-deprecate, but I'm really about what am I doing right now? Like, I'm really looking forward to cutting some Eric Gale's guitar.
Hell yeah.
Oh yeah.
And mixing up this Billy Strings stuff that I got and putting some horns on this song with Michael McDonald and Edgar, and I'm excited about what I'm doing. There's this young kid, he's dating Elle Bramhall, who's Doyle's daughter. Name's Tristan Lake LeBeau. Gonna be recording him this summer, and so I dig what I'm doing, and thanks for asking me about the Grammy. And I just have to say that it looks good on paper. And I always appreciate it when someone says, like, that Love Is My Religion is like my favorite Ziggy Marley record. I go, oh, that's cool, man. That makes me happy. For me, the other record that I did with him, which is called Dragonfly, which has a song called True to Myself. That's my favorite thing, one of my most favorite things I've ever done. That didn't win a Grammy. That record, I don't even think you can buy it. It's like you can maybe get it. Someone gives it away to you. But it's funny how there are things that we do that are not like maybe the most commercial success, but
you're still proud of it.
Super proud of it. Yeah. And Ziggy's super proud of that too. He loves True to Myself, because that song is one of the most true to himself.
Awesome.
That's awesome. I saw Ziggy Marley open up for Van Halen on that tour. That opening, remember he opened up for Van Halen on that tour back with Dave in 2007.
Yeah, that was an odd.
It was odd. It was completely strange.
So odd.
That was a Dave thing, I bet.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
He was like, well, maybe we can get Cool in the Gang. No. Well, how about Marley? Maybe they have some good weed.
Yeah, exactly. That would be Dave, right?
Yeah.
Here we got a question
For me.
for you, of course, from Flesh 84. Is the Dookie mod something that can be put on a Switch, Dave? Are you a fan of it?
The Switch would have to switch too many things, so it's not. I don't think it could be put on a Switch per se. The original Dookie mod actually surprisingly has way too much low end in it, and they probably turned the bass off on the track, I would imagine. Latter versions of it that John Suhr has done, or that I have done for people, we shrink the bass down a little bit on it. It's a little bit better than the originals, to be honest. Or like for My Chemical Romance, I copied a Dookie mod for them, and that they already had, and then I added a tight switch on it for them so they can have both options, So yeah, it can't really just be switched. Like if you're saying like on one of my amps, can you put a switch on it that does it or something? It just switches too many things.
Okay.
So not really.
And what are some good studio monitors for the bedroom? No more than 5,000. So that's a pretty good budget.
Is that for me or for you, Dave? I don't answer. These questions are so hard to answer. Give them whoever your favorite Sweetwater guy is, because you're doing Sweetwater, you already pimped Sweetwater, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
All Sweetwater and get into it with Sweetwater. I don't know how to answer that because I don't know exactly what you want and all that, but I love Sweetwater. I'll be honest. Like, I'm not that I'm pimping them to pimp them, but I think they've got one of the greatest like customer service mentalities of anything. They're so awesome, you know. So I'm not going to get into the answering of that because I would leave that for Sweetwater and for you to discuss what you're doing in your bedroom studio. And I'm not trying to, like, you know,
Pass the buck.
pass the buck on this one. There's so many different ways to attack this one that, you know, you just get into this list and then my mind numbs. I got my guy at Sweetwater when I mean, I don't need monitors, but yeah, so that's my answer to that, you know, is just.
Well, I say click on this link right here and just buy these. These are good. They're under 5,000. They look pretty good. So,
What is it?
oh, you can't see it?
Sorry, I was on another page. I was going to give a record. Oh,
the barefoot sound.
Oh, I was going to go the barefoot footprint 03s.
Okay,
they're really quite good, and I know Pete Thorne got a set of them, and was.
Yeah, but you may not even need to spend up to $5,000. You may be able to get
you could probably also do it with a set of Yamahas.
You know, it depends what you're doing. Are you recording? Are you mixing? You playing bass? Are you cutting drums? Are you doing vocals? It's like, it's really like you got to start qualifying the whole conversation, and that like it just
depends.
What's your favorite microphone? Well, what am I recording? You know, what am I doing? What's your favorite preamp? You know, oh man, let's not go down that road. That's like, that's wearying. It's wearying.
I hear you. Well, so the next project is we got Eric Gale's coming up. Michael McDonald you're working on, so that's awesome. It's great. And do you do all of that in your studio there, or do you go work?
No, I don't record here. I mix.
Okay.
I go, like, the Michael stuff I cut at the Village, and Eric we're at NRG, and then a week later I'm cutting strings and horns for Dr. Dre on something. I'm a Swiss Army knife. Like, I don't produce everything. I don't engineer everything I mix. I don't mix everything I engineer, but when I produce, engineer, and mix it. So when I'm producing, I do it all, but I'm a Swiss Army knife. I love recording. So I get hired all the time as an engineer to just go, you know, Dre has a great team, but he needs a guy like me who knows how to record a big string date and a big horn date and cut things, you know, like that. And so I give them these awesome recorded tracks with the plate and chamber all printed, so it sounds all old school and cool, and they just push it up, and it like makes them really happy. And and I get to go to places like East West and do that there.
Right.
Sunset Sound all the time. I designed a plugin for Sunset Sound that's on IK Multimedia. It's called Sunset Sound Studio Reverb. And
I have that.
Man, that's great.
I have that. That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, that's my design. That's my idea, my design, my everything. And then Studio 2, Sunset Sound 2 just came out earlier in the year, which is version 2 that has more room, like you can move the mics around the room and this and that, and it has 2 sides to it. So I'm involved with that. Like I never would want a signature plugin because, you know, I don't believe in having a sound. I believe in the sound. So, you know, let Chris Lodalgi put his name on an LA2A or an 1176. I'm not going to do that. Let Jack Puig put his name on a Fairchild. I'm not going to do that. That's good for them. But I thought the idea was a great idea, and I brought it to Paul Camerata, and I'm like, you know, they have, you know, these studios are, you know, having they're turning themselves into a plugin. Let's do it here. Yeah. And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a great idea, actually.
Yeah, so he thought it was a great idea, and we started with one company, and then it didn't really pan out. And I was having lunch one afternoon with Dave Kersner, who's the K of IK, and gave him the idea. And he's like, "Oh man, that's a great idea. Let me see if they want to do it." We had it done in 14 months. It was so cool.
They're a
Awesome.
great company. IK Multimedia. They did really good stuff. Well, look, man, it was great to have you on, Ross. A pleasure to meet you and hear about all the work you've done. I really appreciate your time, taking the time to come on.
Oh,
it was awesome.
Hang, I mean, Dave and I were sitting in Phil X's kitchen a few weeks ago, and Dina, your wife, we were like, she was like, "Well, you guys have to, don't even talk now. Save it all for when
yeah, exactly, right? Yeah.
I'm like, no, we're not going to talk.
Don't worry, there's plenty of stuff to talk about,
Yeah.
and there's probably a whole nother fucking gamut of.
Oh, we could have a whole other show, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, it goes on forever. Yeah.
Well, you're welcome anytime. Absolutely.
Well, this was really a pleasure, and I hopefully your Van Halen contingent, doesn't get too harsh on me. Just know that I had the time of my life with those guys, and I was so heartbroken, when Ed left us.
Mhm.
And it's an honor to be, a friend of the family, as Dave knows what it's like to be, in that,
Inner circle.
where you're just someone who is like, we honor we honor it all, and hopefully I didn't, wasn't too cagey or didn't say, I tried to be.
No, that's fine.
No, man. I know the drill.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, man. So thanks again for having me. I super appreciate it. And Dave, keep making great amps and doing what you do. The world needs someone like yourself, a tone meister, making gear that sounds good.
Well, I'll keep doing it. It's the only thing I know how to do.
My roommate in my storage locker left me. We broke up, and he moved into Dave. Dave, he lives with Dave now. Pete Thorne.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And so we were like the odd couple for quite a few years, and then he left me. He just left me high and dry. But I have a new. I'm gonna say this just to be really non-PC. My new bitch, who's been my bitch for about 5 years, is Phil X. So he moved into my storage gear, my locker. So Pete left me for Dave, and then no, but it's cool because Pete and I, it was always awesome having him as my gear mate, and so now he's got himself set up down there at your spot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Again, we try to surround ourselves with people that are like supportive, and we support them, and that's what this is all about. So we're really fortunate. We got a great circle of friends here, in LA. I have to say, it's killer.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great community.
Yeah. So thanks for inviting me into your world today.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great to meet you and to hear all your past and all your working on now too, and what's coming out. Guys, check out Ross Hogarth. Check out all the stuff he's going to be coming out with soon, and all his past work. And we'll have a show coming up. I don't know, a couple weeks. We'll figure it out. Might do an Ask Dave show. We'll figure it out. But everybody have a great weekend. Ross, just hang on while we say goodbye. Take care, everybody. We'll talk soon.
See my thing.